Now we're going to.
I just had my peanut butter and honey sandwich.
There you go. I just had a jar of peanut butter and a jar of honey, so that's good. We have something in common.
You fucking Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah. I would kill for his waistline, actually. All right, hold on here. Here we go. All right, Sev. Episode, I think it's 8.
Episode 8.
Yep, episode 8. Antoine Walker.
Hey, we're just like Yellowstone. We're through 8 episodes.
Yeah, they got a few more viewers than we do, though.
Yeah, and if I have to go through one more episode of Yellowstone and not see Rip,
come on,
I'm going to be upset. I need more Rip.
Yeah, it's like watching the Big 3 without Larry Bird. I mean, give me a break, would you? You know, who the fuck wants to see Parrish throwing up fadeaway jump shots from the block all day? Anyways, I got something new that I want to sort of go over here with our topics. We've done like development of positions and all types of things, but I think it's an important thing that, I don't know, sort of a combination of things. Like, I'm not a huge fan of credit. Like, people sort of like they need it, they crave it, they think that like in talking about development of a player, like everybody wants to be tied to they're the reason why. And it's funny, like I did a project when I was at the Mavs. I started it until I started talking to a friend of mine that told me like I was wasting my time. I wanted to try to like credit, organizations who's got the best player development, but it's impossible because things move around, but there's so many people involved with a player's development. And I saw it in like last year and a half with the Mavericks with other teams and coaches. Like every time the player they're working with makes a shot, they sort of want everyone to say, yeah, that was me. Like, I've never been about that, but it's not about the credit deal. It's more about there's so many people involved in a player's development. It's so many different things. I want to talk to you about it because you've been at every level, high school, college, pro. You worked as a trainer with Grover, like with me. And I want your opinion on that as far as like, where does the development of a player come from? Because it's not just a skills coach. It's not just a coach that's putting them through drills before games. There's a lot of people involved with that. So I want to sort of talk about that. I think it's a good topic.
Yeah, I think it is too. And maybe to give some coaches that are listening to us, maybe a little bit of insight on kind of what goes on within a professional organization and all the people that are involved with the development of a player.
Right.
Now, when we're talking about high school players, there's usually like 2 or 3 people. There's
sure.
the player, maybe there's an assistant coach, maybe the head coach, maybe a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a former player. So there's really not a whole lot available to high school players, normal high school players.
Right.
As far as, who's involved in the development. And then as you go into college, then a few more people are going to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to the professional level, it's a ton of people that are involved. And like you said, human nature is, part of human nature is wanting to be validated for what you're doing.
Sure.
And getting credit for the work that you do with the player.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen it sometimes kind of go to the extreme where there's, more than one person trying to fight to get in, to be first in line, to get the credit for the successful player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good that we talk about all the different people that collaborate to develop a player.
Yeah. Look, we both ran player development programs for different NBA teams, and everyone does it a little different. But when you sort of look at a player and how they develop, first of all, they develop physically. So I don't care what drill you're doing, you're not making them stronger. The strength coach has a lot to do at the NBA level with the development of a player, because most players come in that not having a body for an NBA, that play their NBA position. Look, there are only so many LeBron Jameses. There's only so many of these like juggernaut athletes that can come in. It doesn't matter if they're coming out of high school, the
Right.
first year, from the first minute, they can compete in an NBA game. They may not be able to dominate from day one, but they can compete in an NBA game.
Yeah,
So,
most players, physically, their bodies just aren't ready,
right.
you know, for the grind of an NBA season and for the position. The guys like LeBron, and we had a young kid that we drafted 10 years ago named Eric Bledsoe,
Right.
that was physically ready. Derrick Rose was, at 18 or 19, his body was physically ready.
Mm-hmm.
But 95% of the players, they're not. So
Right.
the first people that we'll talk about are, like you said, the strength coaches.
Strength coach.
They have to get their hooks into that player early.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're
right after the draft or whatever.
In my opinion, they're top two in the development of a player. They're top two in what develops a player. Let's just say what it is on this episode. We're going to talk all about the NBA, professional players. So it's like, okay, so but I mean, you could take this on smaller levels, but for the most part, let's just talk about that. So we talk about the strength coach. They need to develop the body. They need to develop the body and the strength of a player to be able to compete on a daily basis. Okay, so you've got the
and kind of a little more on the strength coaches, and a lot of people think it's just one person. It's gotten to the point now where it's just like a strength staff. Maybe four guys.
There's there's at least 6-7 people on every staff in the NBA now. With conditioning, with strength, with diet, with nutrition. I mean, without that foundation, I don't care who the workout coach is or who the development coach is. Like, if you don't have that, we had one in Dallas, still has one named Jeremy Holsopple. He was the best in my opinion, one of the best I've been around as far as building bodies for an NBA team, that works for a team. He's fantastic. And you see a player for when they get drafted to net where they are now. Like, I think of Dwight Powell. Like, when Dwight came into the league, he was, you could see he was cut up, but there were some things he couldn't do yet physically. And with Jeremy, like less than 2 years, the guy was solid. He was like oak. You couldn't move him. And Jeremy had everything to do with that, that development. So, the strength and conditioning staff is very important with a player. Then obviously you got the development coach. You got the coach that's assigned to work with the player on their individual skills. They've got a little bit to do with it as well. They're putting them through the workouts and developing skills that they wouldn't necessarily have, before they got there. I mean, putting them workouts before, after practice, off days, off nights, before games. They're with them every day. They're talking to them, from the bench or what have you in timeouts. So they've got obviously that's the next person you talk about, as far as the development of a player. What do you have to say with that? So,
those are the two groups of people, trainers and player development coaches, that probably have their hands on the young kids more than anybody.
Strength coach. Yeah. We'll get into trainers because they're another part of it, as far as the
strength coach. I meant strength coach. Yeah. Because they get them right away. And people would be amazed at, you get a player from you draft a player from a big time college program. Mm-hmm. I won't name names.
Sure.
And the player will come in and they'll be like, we didn't weightlift, we didn't, we didn't, it wasn't mandatory. We could lift or we could not lift. They didn't make us do it. And then there were other college programs where they actually, held guys accountable in the weight room. But you'd be surprised how many big time college basketball programs that don't, have their guys lifting, and they come into the NBA and they're like shocked. What do you mean I got to lift 4 or 5 times a week?
Exactly.
If you don't do it, you get fined.
Yeah, exactly. But
the player development coaches are the ones that physically, have their hands on them, skills, drills, on court development. And normally in a normal NBA day, the player would, be with the strength and conditioning coaches for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. And then, onto the court with the player development coaches.
Right. And the development coach is working with them usually when they get into the gym, get into the practice facility in the morning. Maybe they work on specific things. They'll work with them after practice. They'll work with them at night, and they'll work with them like on the road,
Right.
or during like before games and things like that. So they're sort of assigned to that player. Usually you stick with the same coach, through the entirety of, for the first few years at least. So that development coach is sort of adding new skills to them individually. And I think, mostly offense, some defense, but mostly offense. And I think obviously that person's important, but, very interchangeable, but that person's important as far as the daily routine and structure of a player's development.
Right. And there's times too when the player development coach and the strength conditioning coach have to work together with the player. And for example, players coming back from an injury.
Yeah.
The strength conditioning coach and the trainers and the player development coaches have to be on the same page, because a lot of times they're going to dictate how much, what do they call it? The
load management.
Yeah. He can only go 15 minutes and he can't do this, but he can't do that,
Yeah.
So they've got to work together with players that are coming back from injuries or have, something wrong with their body. So, you have to be able, there has to be some give and take. And because I've been guilty of, I'm out on the court, putting a player through something that the strength and conditioning coaches, didn't agree with. And they'd run out there and say, hey man, you can't be doing that today with this guy.
Yeah.
So those guys have to be on the same page.
I was lucky to have Jeremy, in Holsopple and, been able to talk to him. Like, I don't think there was a day that went by that, that we were home, that him and I didn't have a 2 to 5 minute conversation about player A, player B, player C, injury, sort of like, hey, is that okay? This is what we're going to probably do. Anything specific you want, especially if a player's coming off an injury, being able to communicate with a strength coach, I think is important. So we went over strength coach, we went over skill coach. I think trainers are very important, because they're the ones that sort of deal with the injuries and deal with the day-to-day and make sure the player is healthy enough to compete on a daily basis. And now trainers are getting more and more sort of power in the NBA as far as like overseeing development. They oversee sort of the health and wellness of players on a medical side as well. We had the best in the league in Casey Smith, and
Casey's really good.
Yeah, it's the best. And again, communicating with Jeremy and Casey about, hey, look, like, all right, what does this look like when this player comes back? Or, what do you think we should be doing? And just sort of, I always said, I'm like Burger King, I'll make it your way. You just got to like, let me know what exactly you need. But I think communicating with those two was really important, to be able to just sort of, to migrate through the day with these players and just to make sure. But those guys are, I don't think trainers and strength coaches get enough credit for what they do with players every day, because if they can't get healthy and they can't build strength in their, in their day to day, I don't see how they can compete and have a good career in the NBA for sure.
Yeah. And the trainers are probably some of the hardest working people in the NBA.
Incredible.
I mean, people have no idea the amount of responsibility and the amount of time that they put in. They turn on the game and they see, the trainer sitting right by the head coach, what a cool job. He keeps track of the timeouts, or whatever. And he gets to sit there and watch the game, which, that's a great perk of the job, but they have no idea what goes into the trainer's day. If they could just spend a life, through the trainer's shoes, especially on the road. It's ridiculous how much those guys work and how much time they put into it.
Yeah.
And, most of them, for the most part, trainers, survive coaching changes for the most part, and they can be there for a long time.
Yeah. I worked with only one. We worked with Casey Smith and a guy named Deion Calhoun, that they work hand in hand. The daily stuff that they have to do to make sure players look like, it's funny, they might not like appreciate them early in their careers, but the first time, and it's going to happen when they get hurt, those guys, they look to them, because they're the ones that are going to get them healthy and get them on the right track and get them.
Yeah.
And Like, I think that, especially like you said in college, like they don't really think of it that way for the most part. But then when you're actually in the league and, you get an injury that you never dealt with. So most of these guys have never gotten hurt besides maybe a little sprained ankle or whatever. But when you get something, mildly, even close to being serious, you could see the switch, and all players go through it. Like, as far as the attention to the detail of what the trainer and strength coach is telling them to get back on the court healthy and strong.
Yeah, it's an incredibly important position into the player's development. And trainers, to me, the head trainer is kind of like in high school, the janitor. The high school janitor probably knew everything that was going on with your players.
Mm-hmm.
The trainer usually knows everything that's going on with your players. Like if the head coach wants to know, what's going on with so-and-so, the trainer is going to know.
I'll tell you what.
They know what's going on, who's full of shit and who's not.
Yeah.
They know what's going on in their personal life. I mean, because they're around the players, talking to them so much.
If you're a player development coach, a young player development coach especially, and you're in college or you're a grad assistant, the number one place to hang out, if you can, is the training room. And that's where you get to know players. You could talk to them. They're sort of in a different environment. They sort of let loose a little bit. They let their guard down a little bit. And
a little bit of a barbershop situation.
Never watched the show, so I don't really know.
No, I meant the movie.
Oh, barbershop situation. I thought you meant on Coming to America, that barbershop. But
hey, you and I, before practice starts, before we're with the players, the first thing I do is go into the training room.
Yeah. I usually
shot. How you feeling? Whatever. And there's always a TV show on or a game or something, but that's and a lot of times the head coach will stay out of the training room. Yeah. Because it's almost like the player's domain.
Yeah, it's like the demilitarized zone. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of just like it's sort of a common haven for the player to be able to let loose. And again, that's why you get a lot of intel. You get a lot of like developing your relationships with the player, because like usually when they're on the court or whatever, they're getting shuffled from place to place and they're into the game, they're into the practice, everybody's pulling at them. Usually in the training room, they could just sort of chill and relax. Usually they get iced or they're getting stimmed, but like even to check on a player, like, tap them on the shoulder, say, what's going on, man? You good? And talk. Maybe it's something you watched last night, somewhere you're going to go, or, let them talk. And it's a good place. But the trainer, like you said, they know everything what's going on with their team. They know the pulse of your team. And I think that's really important.
And I remember, a few times the head coach that I would work for would go to the trainer and say, how do you think the team's do, especially if you're on the road? How do you say you're on the road and you got a day off and you got practice planned for that day off?
Right.
The coach may go to the trainer and say, what do you think? How are the guys feeling? Do you think we should cancel practice or go ahead and have practice? Right. You're on the plane, getting ready to land. The coach is going to go to the trainer. What do you think? What time should we bring them in tomorrow? How much sleep do they need?
Right.
The trainer is such an important part of the player's development.
Without question. So we have the trainer, we have the strength coach, we have the workout coach. Let's go to another one. So, I always like to separate it, Sev, with players that I worked out. I don't think the player development coach should be watching film on team stuff. I think individual, the individual shots they're taking, great. But I think that it's important there's always going to be a coach that watches film, maybe on offense and defense, maybe just on the offensive side, but there's that coach that's going to teach them through the sets on the offensive side. When my last years in Dallas, it was Mike Weiner. I would always send players to that wanted to know the sets and learn what we're doing. We had Steven Silas and Caleb Canales in years past, but I thought Mike was always good because Mike was on top of things. And so I would always encourage if somebody's struggling with sets, but there's always that coach or coaches that are going to talk to the players about like what, the offensive and or defensive side of the ball and how to correct. So there's that other piece of their development of, learning NBA offenses and defenses, assistant coach or coaches.
Yeah, it's usually the Each team will have a defensive coach, kind of coordinates that, and then an offensive coach who kind of deals with that. So the player has to develop a relationship with each of those guys. Maybe it's the same person doing both,
Right.
but usually not. Usually it's separate.
An offense and defense, right?
Yeah, an offense and defense coach to be able to go to and sit and watch film. That's really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important. Again, they need to know that, because what happens in my perfect sort of utopia of in a player development program and a team would be the separation of the player development being an individually skill-based program to the coach or coaches that handle the offensive and defensive side of the ball to make sure they're on target. And I don't think they should cross-match, because I think that there should be a little separation there. Of course, we're talking NBA and we have the numbers and staff, but I think that like coach, there should be somebody that handles that, and there should be somebody who handles that, because now it's a different specific, it's sort of a different deal, like a completely different deal individually.
It really is.
And I think it's important because they need to know their team mistakes, team rotations. And, I think, again, if you could separate it, everything's got a compartment. And I think that's healthy for a player, because now you're not crossing your lane and dealing with things you're not dealing with as a coach. I think having separation is good on that sense. It's sort of law and order with it,
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered that. I think the next person that gets involved, and I don't know if you guys had this with Dallas, but there's usually one person on the staff that deals with the mental, psychological part of a player's development.
Yeah, we didn't have a guy in Dallas. We had the guy in Dallas.
Well, yeah, Dallas. You have the king. Don, DK.
The Don is right.
Yeah, I mean, he's the best. But most teams have that type of person. Now, if you've got something mentally, it could be totally unrelated to basketball.
Right.
Or it could be related to, your performance on the court. Maybe, there's a mental block or something. But most teams have that person that you can go to to deal with the mental side of the stuff. Maybe it's your personal life. Maybe it's something basketball related.
Yeah. And I think that, like, we've talked about that before, and with the coaches being able to spend time and talk to players. But obviously the NBA level, they have professionals that dealt with it. And dealing with Don Cockstein every day, DK, not like the importance of meeting with players and talking to them and sort of having a safe haven for them where that intel is not going to get back to the coaching staff, be able to vent and be able to talk about things. And look, some teams have them. Most teams do. If you're a high school, college coach that don't have it, have an assistant coach at least there to be able to talk to players. But yeah, like you have the mental side. And I think that DK is important. Don was important to all players and still is. But I think definitely with the young players, how to deal with stress, emotion, the rigors of a season, and sort of like the ups and downs of what they're going through on and off the court. And I think they need somebody to talk to. But that, like, without that component, again, they may not get to a level they need to get to, because most of these players aren't just good enough to turn it on from day one and be a Hall of Famer. Like, most of these players got to grind through it and got to work through it. And again, we've mentioned about 5 or 6 people already that deal with things. And, I'll go with the last one that's most important. Now, not the last one, but the one that's definitely the most important is the head coach. Your head coach is the director of your player development, without question. I don't care what you have, because with all these drills, all this health, all the mental wellness, all the film, all the time you spend preparing, without the head coach giving you minutes to perform on the court and to make mistakes and play through mistakes and develop, you're not going to be a player. So, the head coach has a lot to do without even doing anything. Just the power of playing you is going to be huge in your development, because we've seen it before, Sev. Guys drafted in the late first or early second, supposed to be this great player, great talent, but they only play in the D League, and they only work. You only see them working out during games. It's sort of like, I don't know. It's sort of like Hannibal Lecter. You see him coming out in the suit, but you never really see him. They're in a cell somewhere. And and you never get to see them on the court. And then like year 3 or year 4, they finally start playing, and they don't have that time to play through adversity. I think coaches being able to play their players, especially young players, minutes is just invaluable, I think. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, yeah. The head coach is, that's why he's called the head coach, because he's the head of everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's over the trainers, he's over the assistant coaches, he's over the player development coaches, he's
Mm-hmm.
over the strength conditioning coaches. He may not have much to do with the mental coach or the psychologist or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but he may.
Right.
And so that he's another, probably, other than the player himself, he's probably the most important person.
Yeah, I agree.
When you look at the big picture.
We got other people for sure.
Yeah. There's other people that are involved. Let me just say that most players, when they come into the league, they've never had to deal with the amount of media
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to have to be faced with now in the
Right.
NBA. So you have media specialists.
Yeah.
You have the director of PR or whatever it's called, and those people on that side can help you navigate interviews, social media, how to present yourself, in a TV interview or something after a game or a press conference. Those people can help guide your development on all that stuff, media related.
Oh, totally. Like
how to speak. Some guys, have never had to speak in front of a camera before.
Right. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Hopefully this guy will never.
Froggy?
Froggy. Hopefully this guy will never have to speak in front of a camera, but it's just part of. There we go.
Froggy. Hey, Froggy.
Hey, what are you doing? Come here. Come here. Before you knock everything down. Come here. Come here. Say hi to the camera. Hi. Yeah, you want to say hi? Go. Say bye-bye, Daddy. Go. Say hi, Sev. Yeah, so this is the Brady Bunch. This is the Brady Bunch, the real edition. All right. So, hold on. Hold on, Sev.
Sonia, come on. Go.
There you go.
Sonia, go.
See, you don't see this on Joe Rogan.
You got dogs. You got the grandmother. You got Froggy.
Without question. Come here, Froggy. Give me that. Give me that. I know. I got it. So the media people are so important because, again, like you said, they got to deal with the day-to-day. And I think like as director of player development, it was our job to make sure, it was my job to make sure, our job to make sure that like players were professional and they knew what professional was and they knew what like being a professional on a day-to-day is. And don't worry, I'm not watching Bluey. That's Froggy, just so you know. Froggy, give me that. But I think that like on a daily basis, dealing with scheduling and dealing with being on time and dealing with the other things off the court, I think of having a great PR person is so important. It's so important to it. And I think that that's something that like teaches a player and again makes a player grow better and mature better, is having a great PR person to handle interviews. Because how many interviews are you going to have pregame, postgame, during the off season, during off days, so I think that those are things that are really important to the development of a player for sure.
Right.
Trainer, like having their personal trainer, like their basketball trainer, like you see that's part of their development, so I think that sort of has to be something that you talk about, like
right.
They have to work with somebody. They usually work with them in the off season. You see so many of them today, guys like Drew Hanlon, Nola Roach, Irv Rowland. You see a few more other, rolling around. So I think all those things are important, in the development of a player.
And then the next group of people, Sweet Chuck,
yep.
And they don't have a lot of interaction with these people, but there's a group of people that are, I don't know what you call them, but we call them like community service people. The people that are in charge of NBA players have a certain amount of appearances that they have to make every year. Public appearances usually. And so there's a group of people. We had Denise Booth and her staff with the Clippers were just unbelievable. They were just great. And getting these players to the events that they had to go to, maybe it's a school or a signing of autographs or something. But those people, who actually are in charge of getting players in front of the community, or in front of sponsors or whatever, those people are important to the development of a player as well. It
all wraps up.
We had Tracy Schneider with the Clippers. Her and Denise Booth did a great job. And they put in unbelievable hours in setting up these community relation events and charities and things like that. So those people, for the first time in a player's life, he has to actually get out in the community, or a charity event and present himself to the public.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it all ties in. It all ties in. And then you've got people that are directors of player development that maybe oversee this whole thing and oversees sort of a player, oversees the player's development. Froggy, give me this. Thanks. Hey, you can have this. I think that, see what we're dealing with, sir? It's bad enough.
Hey, and we're not going to edit any of this out.
No, not one thing. Hold on. Hold on. iPad, buddy. I love this. Maybe the paternity test just came in. He found out that I'm the father. Froggy, come here. Come here. Come here.
He wants to watch Blue's Clues.
Yeah. You can't do it, buddy. Look, you're disabled. Here, come here. I know. The FedEx guy wasn't your father. You're pissed. I get it. Froggy, come here. Only me. Sev, give me a second, buddy.
Sure.
Hey, look at this. Mickey Mouse. Yeah, believe me, I understand you, buddy.
Disney Plus is a lifesaver.
Without question. Without question. Hey, Froggy, come here. See? There you go. Come on, sit down. See? We give parenting advice and everything on this show. Go.
Sure.
Go ahead, sit down. Up there. Sit down. Go ahead. Sit down and watch that. Patience is a virtue, my man. But like having a player development director that sort of put everything together. Some of them work with you on the court. Some of them just oversee all this. And I think that you have to, as a player development director, and I'd like what you thought when you were in Chicago and LA, you did the same thing. Like you have to channel all this, like who he's working out, who the player's working out with, making sure that they're scheduling on time and they're early to everything, that they're watching the film, they're interacting with all the people we just mentioned. Sometimes you're the psychologist, you're dealing with issues they're going to have with the head coach, playing time, all these things, and teaching these players to be professional. And I think that if you don't have a good foundation of how to, teach these players how to be professional, forget about getting paid to be a professional, but just professional acting and knowing how to carry themselves on preparation, on getting the skill work in, watching the film, and all of these things, they got very little chance of making it unless they're a LeBron James type of player.
Yeah, and one of the best things about the NBA is, they have the resources to try to cover whatever need a player has, to be able to reach their potential and their development. So, we're very fortunate enough in the NBA to have all these kind of resources. And colleges and high schools, they may be lacking in a lot of those things.
Right.
If you're a high school coach, you got to be all those things.
Right. But you're looking at it. But you're looking at it. No, I agree. But when you're looking at it, Sev, when you say to yourself, well, why did this player become good? You know, and it like, especially, sorry about this, Sav. I gotta make sure Disney's on, or this kid's gonna go nuts again. There you go, buddy. There you go. See? You know, like, that's why, like, if you're saying, well, yeah, like you go to an NBA game and you watching like one coach work out a player, like especially a young player, and you're saying, wow, he must be the reason why this player is good. Yeah, that's true. Like, they definitely had something to do with it, but there's so many people that get into the fact that a player is good. You know, even in a high school or college player, you've got the people who watch film with them and correct their mistakes, the people that drive them to, you know, work with them in the off season. You've got maybe a strength coach they work out with, or somebody else that they work out with. You know, you've got a mom and dad that help them. They're all, you know, whatever. Like, there's so many people that go into the development of a player. It's not just the one person that's working them out in the off season, or you watch them on Instagram working with a trainer. Like, you know, yeah, they have something to do with it, but there's so many people that go into the development of a player. You know, it's really, you know, I just wanted to cover this because I think it's important for people to know, you know, especially if you're feeling good about yourself, about you're the only reason why a selected player is good. It's really not the case. There's so many people that are involved in it, you know, and I have always sort of thought this, but when I was running the player development with Dallas, like, I was so grateful to have such a great staff of people that work with players. I actually enjoyed sitting back my last year or so and watching our coaches and our players work with our shooting coach, Peter Patton, and God Shamgod, and our trainer, you know, Casey Smith and Jeremy Holsapple, watching film with like guys like Mike Weiner or, you know, Jamal Mosley, and, you know, Coach Carlisle giving them the, you know, resources by playing minutes. Like, there's a whole package of people involved with, you know, the development of a player. And it's sort of fascinating to me, you know, how a player goes from, you know, I call it, when they get into the league, it's like a 4-lane highway. They get in on the right, and you want them by year 3 or year 4, get in the fast lane where they're just handling it like autopilot, you know? Sev, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with that.
Okay. No, I think this is really good, and it gives the coaches that listen kind of an inside peek into all the people that have their hands on players.
Yeah, and we gave parenting advice too today, so that was great. If you got a screaming wacko of a son, you know how to deal with him. Just throw an iPad in front of him. Right, Froggy?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So what else, Sev?
Okay.
Anything we didn't cover on this?
I think that's it. That's it. I think you got it. Credit. There's enough credit to go around for a lot of people.
Credit is a real scary thing, man. It really is. Like, seriously. People just wanting to, you know, wanting people to pat them on the shoulder constantly about being inventors of the game. It's not really that. There's a million people involved, and you got to give all these people sort of props on the development of a player at any level. It's just, there's never one person. The closest guy that I ever met that was sort of had to do with the greatness of one player was Holger from Dirk.
Yeah.
Holger worked with Dirk, and he did a lot for Dirk. Shooting, offense, strength and conditioning, working with him in the off season, was his agent for a long time, if not the whole career. Like, he sort of took him and he surrounded this kid and made, like, he sort of made sure every step of the way he was good. You see all these players, they work with a million different trainers. There's a million people that, you know, but also with Dirk, you know, Casey Smith had to keep him, you know, healthy. And, you know, like, you know, Robert Hackett and Jeremy Holsapple did his strength. And, you know, there was so many people that, you know, helped him. Don Nelson giving him the minutes and the courage and the sort of the, you know, the positive sort of impact. And, you know, Don Nelson, there was a million people. Mark Cuban, like, there's a lot of people involved with his development. But Holger sort of, I would say, got the majority of, you know, got him to where he needed to get to. But there's a million people involved in a player's development on a daily basis. And I think that sometimes we just, you know, especially when you're not inside of it, you don't really understand that. You think just, like you see this person whispering to him in the off seasons, whispering sweet nothings in this player's ear on Instagram during a workout, that's the only reason why this player is good. And it's just not the case. There's a million people involved in a player's development.
You said it great.
Any other words of wisdom, Sev?
No, I got nothing.
Yeah, I got to stop this kid before he goes on some not so healthy for human eyes websites on my iPad.
Yeah, I don't want to have to call CPS during this conference call.
No, it's not. No, we don't have enough masks, so we're good.
All right.
All right, brother. Hey, another good episode. I hope the 8 people that are following us really, really enjoy it.
Until next time.
Okay, later.